What is this module about? This module will deal with multiplication and division of fractions. Learning about these mathematical operations can help you quantify measurements in daily life. For example, how do you divide a 3¼ hectare plot of land among 4 people? How do you know how much sugar is needed to make 3 dozen cookies if you need 3/4 of a cup of sugar per dozen of cookies? Before reading this module, you should have finished studying the modules Learning about Fractions and Addition and Subtraction of Fractions. This module is divided into 2 lessons. Lesson 1, Multiplication and Division of Proper and Improper Fractions. Lesson 2, Multiplication and Division of Mixed Numbers. What will you learn from this module? After studying this module, you should be able to multiply and divide proper and improper fractions, get the reciprocals of fractions, and multiply and divide mixed numbers. Lesson 1, Multiplication and Division of Proper and Improper Fractions. How do you measure parts of a fraction? For example, what is 1/3 of 3/4 of a kilo of rice? Or how much flour should be used for 3 dozen cookies if 2/3 of a cup of flour is needed for every half dozen cookies? To answer these questions, you will need to know how to multiply and divide proper and improper fractions. This lesson will teach you how. After studying this lesson, you should be able to multiply proper and improper fractions, get the reciprocals of fractions, and divide proper and improper fractions. Let's try this. A fraction of a fraction. Imagine yourself at a birthday party. You are with 2 friends. When the 3 of you arrived at the party, only half of the whole cake remained. The shaded portion below represents the part of the cake that was already eaten. If the remaining portion of the cake would be divided equally among the 3 of you, what portion of the whole cake would you get? Can you divide the remaining cake equally among the 3 of you? Draw 3 lines on the picture on the previous page to equally divide the cake into 3. When divided into 3, the remaining cake should look like this. Let's study and analyze. How do you know that 1/3 of 1/2 is 1/6? To get the fractional part of a fraction, you need to multiply 1/2 by 1/3. Shown below are the steps in multiplying fractions. Step 1. Multiply first the numerators of the fractions. Step 2. Multiply the denominators of the fractions. Step 3. Find the products of the numerators and the denominators. The resulting answer is the product of the multiplied fractions. Following these steps, you can solve for the product of 1/3 and 1/2. Step 1. Multiply the numerators of the fractions. Step 2. Multiply the denominators of the fractions. Look at another sample problem. Find the product of 3/5 and 11/17. Solution. Step 1. Multiply the numerators of the fractions. Step 2. Multiply the denominators of the fractions. Step 3. Find the products of the numerators and the denominators. The resulting answer is the product of the multiplied fractions. Let's solve this problem. Now that you know how to get the products of fractions, you can now apply this knowledge in solving mathematical problems involving fractions. This is useful in finding fractional parts of fractions. Let us try solving the problem below. Mang Asyong owns half-hectare of farmland. He decides to give half of the land he owns to his sons. How much land in hectares did he give to his son? Solution. To help visualize the problem, illustrations are provided. Imagine the figure to be a 1-hectare piece of land. The shaded portion is 1/2 hectare, representing the land that Mang Asyong owns. If 1/2 of the land Mang Asyong owns is given to his son, how do you represent this using the illustration? Shade with horizontal lines on the figure the portion that represents the land which Mang Asyong's son will own. What portion of the 1-hectare piece of land will Mang Asyong's son own? You can verify this mathematically by multiplying 1/2 hectare by 1/2. Compute for the answer below. Let's learn. You have already learned how to multiply proper fractions and apply your knowledge in solving problems. The same principles used in multiplying proper fractions are also used in multiplying improper fractions. Before moving on to division of proper and improper fractions, you need to learn the concept of reciprocals. A reciprocal is also known as the multiplicative inverse of a given number. This means that a number and its reciprocal should therefore have 1 as their product when multiplied with each other. Thus, the reciprocal of 3, for example, is 1/3, and vice versa. Getting the reciprocal of a fraction is easy. Just invert the positions of its numerator and denominator. In the expression below, x represents the numerator of the original fraction, while y represents its denominator. Now, why do you think we need to get the reciprocal of a fraction, or any number for that matter, when dividing fractions? The answer to this is simple. You see, dividing fractions is almost the same as multiplying them. Well, almost, but not quite. To divide fractions, we multiply the dividend by the reciprocal of the divisor. Keep in mind that the dividend is always the first number given, while the divisor is the second one. Look at the example below. Since a fraction is an indicated division, meaning if you want to divide 28 by 4, you will write 28 over 4, right? So, since fractions are numbers too, 1/3 divided by 1/4 could be written as 1/3 over 1/4. Look at the resulting fraction again. 1/3 over 1/4. A fraction divided by another fraction is what you get. But we know that we can multiply the numerator and denominator of a fraction by the same number without changing the fraction's numerical value. It would be just like multiplying it by 1. We can also multiply a fraction by its multiplicative inverse, or reciprocal, and get the answer 1. So, we can multiply the denominator of the resulting fraction by its reciprocal to get 1, thereby making our task of dividing the two fractions easier. And since any number divided by 1 is equal to itself, we will then have 1/3 times 4/1. Notice that the second factor in the resulting equation above is just the reciprocal of the original divisor. So, getting the reciprocal of the divisor and changing the operation from division to multiplication is just the shortcut of this quite long process when dividing fractions. This is the reason why we end up multiplying when dividing fractions. Example 2. Find the reciprocal of 1/7. Example 3. Find the reciprocal of 5. Let's study and analyze. Now that you know how to get the reciprocals of fractions, you are ready to learn how to divide proper and improper fractions. Let us work on some examples. Example 1. Divide 2/3 by 3/5. You first need to find the reciprocal of the divisor, 3/5. What is the reciprocal of 3/5? Your answer should be 5/3. Now, change the operation from division to multiplication and replace the divisor with its reciprocal. Find the product. Were you able to get the answer? Your answer should be 10/9. Example 2. Divide 10/7 by 5/4. Solution? Step 1. Determine the reciprocal of the divisor, 5/4. Step 2. Change the operation from division to multiplication and replace the divisor with its reciprocal. Find the product. Express your answer in the lowest terms if possible. Let's study and analyze. You can now apply your knowledge about division of fractions in solving word problems. Study the example below. Example: 9 kilos of rice are to be packed into bags with a capacity of 3/5 kilo each. How many 3/5 kilo bags would be needed then? Solution: 9 kilos of rice are to be divided into how many 3/5 kilo bags? Step 1. Write the problem as a mathematical expression. Step 2. Determine the reciprocal of the divisor 3/5. Step 3. Change the operation from division to multiplication and replace the divisor with its reciprocal. Find the product. Let's remember, to get the product of two or more fractions, get the product of their numerators. This becomes the new numerator. Then get the product of their denominators. This becomes the new denominator. To get the reciprocal of a fraction, just switch the position of its numerator with that of its denominator. To get the quotient of two fractions, substitute the divisor's reciprocal to it and change the operation from division to multiplication.